All right, good morning, students. So, to continue with lesson number 6, life processes. Yesterday, we were discussing about the circulatory system and also about the pumping action of the heart. How the heart is a vital organ. It's a muscular, face-sized organ located slightly to the left, just slightly to the left of the chest bone or the sternum. And it is protected in the rib cage, and its main function is to keep the blood flowing, keep it circulating, so that every single living tissue, every single cell in the body gets oxygen and nutrients for survival. We know that once the heart stops beating, well, life comes to an end, and that's why the heart is the most vital organ in the body. And we have seen why it is such a vital organ and how it functions, how it actually, we have talked about double circulation, how the blood circulates through the lungs and the heart twice. Impure blood comes from different parts of the body and it comes to uh, the vena cava. It comes from through the vena cava. It comes into the upper part, the upper chamber of the heart, and from there it is taken into the pulmonary artery towards the lungs, and near the lungs, inside the lungs, between the capillaries, near the alveoli, there is an exchange of gases. Carbon dioxide is removed into the lungs, from which it is ejected, and the blood becomes purified with oxygen. That pure blood containing oxygen, rich with oxygen, goes into the pulmonary vein from the lungs and then back into the heart. From the heart, again, follow the cursor, again it goes into the aorta. Okay, it is pumped into the aorta and it goes to rest of the body. And from the rest of the body, again, it becomes impure because carbon dioxide is thrown out by every single cell. It mixes with the blood. Oxygen is taken by every single cell, and the blood becomes impure with carbon dioxide. And from the veins, it goes back into the heart. From the heart, it is pumped into the pulmonary artery and into the lungs for purification. So the blood enters the heart twice, and that's why it is called double circulation. All right, then apart from the heart, we also need to understand that there has to be a support system, a network of pipes, as it were, which allows the blood, the pure blood as well as the impure blood, to flow through the body. And that is what we are going to discuss today. We also discussed about blood pressure, how the blood pressure is maintained because of the pumping action of the heart. The blood that flows through the arteries is under pressure, and therefore the walls of the arteries are slightly thicker than the walls of the veins. In the veins, impure blood is flowing. It is not under pressure. That's why the veins have thinner walls. The veins have valves, but the arteries do not have valves. And these are something which we are going to discuss today. All right, so let's see about those. Let us come to that part about the blood capillaries, blood arteries and veins. And this is the main section apart from the heart. All right, the tubes, the blood vessels. Arteries are the vessels which carry blood away from the heart to various organs of the body. Remember, arteries carry purified blood. Since the blood emerges from the heart under high pressure, okay, it is pumped out from the heart. The arteries have got thick elastic walls. Elastic walls means they can stretch. Otherwise, you see, the walls of the arteries has to be able to stretch a little because the blood is under constant pressure. Veins collect the blood from different organs and bring it back to the heart. They do not need thick walls because the blood is no longer under pressure. Instead, they have got valves. Now, veins have got valves, but arteries do not have valves. Why? Because veins do not want impure blood to go in the reverse direction. They want the veins allow the blood, impure blood, to flow towards the heart only, so that from the heart it can go to the lungs for purification. And that's why, to prevent the backflow of blood, there are valves which open in one direction only. They do not need thick walls because the blood is no longer under pressure. Instead, they have got valves that ensure that the blood flows only in one direction. Sometimes you see, when a person grows old, especially in old age, these valves become damaged, and as a result the valves do not function properly, and then the veins become thick because the blood accumulates out there, and that condition is called varicose veins. In older people, you must have seen that, especially this happens in the legs. Okay, because the blood begins to accumulate in the legs for the simple reason that it is against gravity to flow upwards, and that's why these veins are extremely important. And when the veins, the valves, they do not function properly, at that time what happens is a person may develop problems with the veins. Alright, on reaching an organ or tissue, the artery divides into smaller and smaller vessels to bring blood in contact with all the individual cells. You see, some of these capillaries, which become extremely small, are thinner than your human hair, very extremely thin, and they are able to come directly into contact with every single tissue and cells of the body. And where, due to osmotic pressure and due to diffusion, the exchange of gases can occur. The smallest vessels have got walls which are one cell thick and are called blood capillaries. Exchange of material between the blood and surrounding cells takes place across this thin wall. The capillaries then join together to form veins that convey the blood away from the organs or tissues and back to the heart for purification, where it goes to the lungs. Alright, maintenance of platelets. But I have written a couple of questions here also. You can see what that question here is. Number one, okay, state the difference between arteries and veins. Now this is an extremely important question from the point of view of exams. Give the difference between arteries and veins. Arteries carry purified blood. Okay, the blood flowing through arteries is under pressure. Veins carry impure blood. The blood flowing through veins is not under pressure. Okay, arteries have got thick elastic walls, whereas veins do not have thick elastic walls, they got thin walls. Arteries do not have valves, whereas veins have got valves to prevent the backflow of impure blood. So this is an important question. It must be done thoroughly. Alright, then maintenance by platelets. You see, blood platelets are tiny cellular organisms or organs which are found, tiny bodies, platelets, okay, very microscopic. They are found within the blood, and they've got a function. This function is to prevent leakage of blood. For example, what happens when one of your water pipes in the bathroom or in the wash basin in the kitchen, if it develops a leak, what happens? Then you have to plug that leak. Otherwise, water will continue to flow outside. In the same way, if the artery or vein, okay, if some part of your body develops a leak and the blood begins to flow out, then it can be dangerous, because then you see there is a loss of pressure in the arteries because the blood is flowing out, and because of that a person can even lose his life if excess of bleeding occurs. For example, you see in case of humans have about 5.5 to 6 liters of blood on an average. 5.5 liters of blood. This 5 to 5.5 liters of blood, okay, it continuously flows. But if there is a leak in the arteries or in the veins, then blood can flow out and there is a loss of pressure, and that can actually lead to fatality or death. So blood has got certain tiny organelles called platelets, and the function of these platelets is to block or prevent leaks. Wherever there is a leak and blood is flowing out, the platelets go out there and they close the leak by forming clots, clumping together and forming clots. So there is no leakage of blood. What happens is this system of tubes develops a leak with the arteries or veins. Think about situations when we are injured and start bleeding. Naturally, the loss of blood from the system has to be minimized. You can't keep losing blood, otherwise you can die. That is what happens in serious accidents. People often die because of loss of blood. In addition, leakage would lead to a loss of heart pressure from the heart. That pressure would also no longer be sustained, which would reduce the efficiency of the pumping action of the heart. To avoid this, the blood has got blood platelet cells, or simply blood platelets, which circulate around the body and plug these leaks by helping to clot the blood at these points of injury. You see, supposing you develop a scratch and the scratch is deep and it begins to bleed a little bit. After some time, you will see that bleeding stops on its own. What is the reason behind that? You see, the blood contains a substance called fibrinogen. This fibrinogen is actually a protein. The moment blood gets exposed to air, fibrinogen combines with oxygen and forms a network across the wound and prevents excess blood from leaking out. So you see, our body has got natural mechanisms by which it can repair itself, and blood platelets do the job of repairing any loss, preventing and repairing any loss of blood. Okay, then we come to lymph. Now, what is blood lymph? Blood lymph is the liquid medium of the blood. Remember, the blood contains various components. It is a liquid connective tissue, but it contains various components. Red blood cells, white blood cells, it contains hemoglobin, it also contains blood platelets, it contains antibodies for different diseases also, and that's why you don't fall sick so much. And there is the lymph. The lymph is the liquid medium of the blood. Okay, everything else floats on the liquid medium. That liquid medium of the blood is generally pale yellow to whitish in color, and that liquid medium is called the blood lymph. Okay, it is separate. It is not completely. The blood actually appears red in color because of the RBCs, the red blood cells, and the hemoglobin. That's why the blood appears red in color. Otherwise, blood is actually colorless because the liquid medium is absolutely colorless or pale yellow in color. There is another type of fluid also involved in transportation. This is called lymph or tissue fluid. Through the pores present in the walls of the capillaries, some amount of plasma, proteins and blood cells escape into the intercellular space in the tissues to form the tissue fluid or the lymph. So lymph actually is formed by the escaping of blood from those small tiny pores in arteries, veins and capillaries. It is similar to the plasma of blood but colorless and contains less proteins. Lymph drains into the lymphatic capillaries, tiny capillaries, from the intercellular spaces which joins to form large lymph vessels that finally open into larger veins, from where the veins collect this and then transport it back to the heart, and from there back to the lungs. Lymph carries digested and absorbed fat from intestine and drains excess fluid from intercellular space back into the blood. Okay, there is a question here. What is lymph? What is the function of blood lymph? Again, an important question. What is lymph? What is the function of blood lymph? As I have said in the previous videos, please follow the video carefully, highlight whatever I have highlighted, and at the same time, wherever I have written this extra question out there in the margins, please write them down with a pencil in your textbook. This will help you to prepare thoroughly. Alright. Now we come to transportation in plants. Okay. Now you see, in humans, we have discussed how transportation, blood circulation takes place. Plants are also living creatures. They also require constant energy. Okay. And therefore, they must have their own circulatory system. They do not have blood, but they need water and nutrients. And that water and nutrients must also flow through the entire body. Even a large tree such as a banyan tree or an oak tree or a peepal tree, a coconut tree, okay, all of them must have a proper transportation system by which water and nutrients is made available to every single part of the plant. For example, we know about the roots. The roots suck up water from the soil. But there has to be a way by which that water can reach even the top, that is the leaves also, because the leaves also need water. So there is a network, you see, within the plants also, by which transportation takes place within the plants itself. Alright, we know, for example, the leaves carry out what is called photosynthesis, the green leaves. Okay. Also, the green leaves contain tiny holes called stomata on the underside of the leaf, pores called stomata. Through the stomata, water will escape. That process is called transpiration. Transpiration is the process by which water is lost from the leaves, the tiny pores called stomata. That process of transpiration is also important. It helps to maintain the temperature, regulate the temperature of the whole plant, but at the same time, it creates a pressure, an upward pressure, okay, by which water can be sucked up from the roots into the roots, and from the roots into the stem, and from the stem into the leaves. That means there is an upward suction pressure. Just imagine like this. Suppose you are given a bottle of Pepsi and you want to drink it. So you put a straw inside, okay, the plastic straw, and then you put the plastic straw into your mouth. And then you wait for the Pepsi liquid to come into your mouth. You wait the whole day, it's not going to happen, okay. But the moment you suck at it, you see, the moment you begin to suck, at once liquid comes into the straw pipe, and from the straw it goes into your mouth. So what have you basically done? You have created pressure. The difference in pressure at the two ends of the straw. At the one end where your mouth is, you have created a difference in pressure by sucking at it. And the difference in pressure between the upper and the lower end causes the liquid to go inside. Okay? The same thing must happen in a tree. The difference in pressure must be created. and that is called root pressure or osmotic pressure. That root pressure is caused by transpiration. So transpiration plays a very important role. When water escapes through the tiny pores in the leaves, it creates an upward suction pressure. That upward pressure pulls the water and nutrients from the soil into the roots, and from the roots into the stem, and from the stem right up to the leaves. So you see that osmotic pressure or root pressure is extremely important. This entire process is called ascent of sap. I'm going to write one question out here. Okay, what is ascent of sap? Because this ascent of sap is actually vitally important to understand, because that is how plants obtain their nutrition. What is ascent of sap? Okay, what is ascent of sap? Now this ascent of sap is vitally important. Simple reason that this is how, what is ascent of sap? This is how plants obtain their nutrient or their water supply. Otherwise it would not be possible. Alright, now let's just see what is written here. We have discussed earlier how plants take in simple compounds such as carbon dioxide and photosynthesize energy stored in the chlorophyll containing organs, namely the leaves. Photosynthesis takes place in the leaves. Carbon dioxide, water and sunlight are used by chlorophyll. The other kinds of raw materials needed for building plant bodies will also have to be taken up separately, and that happens from the roots. For plants, the soil is the nearest and richest source of raw materials like nitrogen, phosphorus and other minerals which are present dissolved in the water in the soil. The absorption of these substances therefore occurs through the parts in contact with the soil, namely the roots. You see, the main root has got tiny hair. They are called root hair. They are extremely tiny. Okay, just like the hair on your head, extremely tiny. They are called root hair, and that is from where root pressure develops and they are able to absorb the water. If the distances between the soil contacting organs and chlorophyll containing organs are small, energy and raw materials can easily diffuse to all parts of the plant body. But we know this is not possible because trees are very large and there is a huge distance between the leaves and the roots. So simple diffusion is not enough. But if these distances become large because of change in plant body size or design, for example a banyan tree or a coconut tree, diffusion process will not be sufficient to provide raw materials in leaves and energy in roots. A proper system of transportation is therefore essential in such situations. Energy needs differ from different body designs. A small plant will require less water, less energy, but a large tree will require large amounts of water. Plants do not move, and plants' bodies have a large proportion of dead cells in many tissues. If you look at a plant, a tree like a banyan tree or a peepal tree or a neem tree, the stem is covered with bark, B-A-R-K. That bark is nothing but dead tissue. You can remove it with your hands also. That is dead cells and dead tissue. Okay. So as a result, plants have low energy needs and can use relatively low transport systems. The distances over which transport systems have to operate, however, can be very large in plants because plants are very tall, trees are very tall. So the water and nutrients has to travel from down to up, right up to the leaves, a very large distance. But plants can't move, so they have to obtain all the nutrients from the soil. Plant transport system will move energy stores from leaves and raw materials from the roots. Water is absorbed from the roots, but the leaves are where the food is manufactured. So the food produced in the leaves has to move downwards. Okay, whereas the water has to move upwards. These two pathways are constructed as independently organized conducting tubes. Both are separate. Like you have got your bus system, okay, the state transport bus system and the railway network. Two different systems. In the air also there are two different systems. One is the xylem tissue, which you studied in class 9, and the other is the phloem tissue. The phloem tissue transport food materials from the leaves down up to the roots, whereas the xylem tissue conducts water from the bottom, that is the roots, right up to the leaves. One, the xylem moves water and minerals obtained from the soil. The other, phloem transports products of photosynthesis from the leaves, where they are synthesized to other parts of the body, that is the plant body, right down to the roots. These, of course, the xylem and phloem we have studied in class 9. Alright, there are a couple of questions which I have written out here, and you can see that what is the function of xylem tissue. You must write this question out here. What is the function of xylem tissue? Xylem tissue, the function of xylem tissue is to transport water and nutrients from the roots through the stem right up to the leaves. And what is the function? What is the function of phloem tissue? The function of phloem tissue is to transport the products of photosynthesis from the leaves into the stem and right up to the roots. Then transport of water. How does transport of water take place? Now, as I have explained, this transport of water and nutrients which are dissolved in water takes place by a process which is called the ascent. Ascent means to go upwards. Ascent of sap. Sap is nothing but the water in which nutrients are dissolved. Okay, water and all the salts dissolved in it collectively is called sap, S-A-P, and that sap has to move upwards. This ascent of sap is carried out by xylem tissue. The xylem tissue consists of long cylindrical sieves, jali, okay, long cylindrical tubes, and they conduct the water upwards by simple root and osmotic pressure. How does this pressure develop? As I just told you, by transpiration. Then an upward suction force which draws the water from the soil into the root hairs, from the root hair into the main roots and into the stem and leaves. In xylem tissue, vessels and tracheids, okay, tracheids are tiny pipe-like organs of the roots, stem and leaves are interconnected to form a continuous system of water conducting channels reaching all parts of the plant. At the roots, cells in contact with the soil actively take up ions, salt ions, sodium ions, chloride ions, and so on. This creates a difference in concentration of these ions between the roots and the soil. Water, therefore, you see, this is called osmotic pressure. Water, therefore, moves into the root from the soil to eliminate the difference in pressure. This means that there is a steady movement of water into the root xylem, creating an upward column of water that is steadily pushed upwards. However, this pressure by itself is not enough. It is not likely to keep the water flowing right up to the leaves. There has to be some other mechanism, and that is where transpiration comes into the picture. Plants use another strategy to move water in the xylem upwards to the highest point of the plant body, and that is what I explained to you right now about transpiration. You can see this figure 6.8 activity is shown out there. Okay, you can see what is that. Take two small pots of approximately the same size and having the same amount of soil. One should have a plant in the pot, the other should have only a stick in the stick in the soil. Cover the soil in both the pots with plastic sheets so that moisture cannot escape by evaporation. Cover both the sets, one with the plant, the other with the stick, with plastic sheets and place in bright sunlight for half an hour. Do you observe any difference in the two cases? Yes, you will see that the one with the green leaves, you see the green plant, what it does is it creates an upward pressure from the soil, okay, because of transpiration. It creates that upward pressure and water begins to move from the soil into the plants. Whereas in the case of the stick does not have green leaves. Transpiration does not take place. So there is no upward movement and the stick will not even get wet because of that reason. Alright, you can see here the diagram. It's not diagram, it's a simple figure. A tree is shown, okay, and water vapor is lost from the leaves. And you can see that arrows. Water is lost from the leaves. But when that water is lost, it creates an upward pressure, a suction force. Just like I gave you an example with the Pepsi and the straw pipe. And water is pulled from the roots, from the soil into the roots. Provided the plant has an adequate supply of water, the water which is lost through the stomata is replaced by water from the xylem vessels in the leaf. In fact, evaporation of water molecules from the cells of a leaf creates a suction force or a pressure which pulls water from the xylem cells of the roots. The loss of water in the form of vapor from the aerial parts of the plant is known as transpiration. And I have written the question out here, okay, what is root pressure and how does it develop? What is root pressure and how does it develop? All right, and I have also included one more question here. We'll come to that just now. Okay, I'll just write one more question here. What is transpiration here? Okay, what is transpiration? The loss of water vapor from the roots, or rather from the leaves, okay, through the stomata. That loss of water vapor is called transpiration, and this is how the water moves up. All right. Now, transportation of food and other substances. So the water is moved from the soil into the roots and right up to the leaves by the process of upward movement and by the process of xylem suction of water into the root, or what is called root pressure. Now, what about food? There is another system for moving food materials. okay, from the leaves, because the food is prepared in the leaves through the process of photosynthesis. It must move downwards, and that process takes place through the phloem tissue. And this movement of food manufactured in the leaves to downward parts of the plant is called translocation of food. So the question here is, you see here, define translocation. What is translocation? Translocation is different from ascent of sap. Okay, ascent of sap is the upward movement of water. Translocation is the downward movement of food from the leaves into the roots and stems. Okay, so far we have discussed the transport of water and minerals in plants. Now let us consider how the products of metabolic processes, particularly photosynthesis, are moved from the leaves where they are formed to other parts of the plant such as the stem and the roots. This transport of soluble products of photosynthesis is called translocation, and it occurs in the part of the vascular bundles, the vascular tissue known as phloem, not xylem. Besides the products of photosynthesis, the phloem transports amino acids and other substances. Amino acids are building blocks of life. They are extremely important. These substances are especially delivered to the storage organs of roots, fruits and seeds, and to growing parts or growing organs of the plant. The translocation of food and other substances takes place in the sieve tubes, long tube-like structure with tiny perforations or holes. With the help of adjacent companion cells, two of them are close together, okay, and they are called companion cells, both in upward and downward direction. Unlike transport in xylem, which can be largely explained by simple physical forces, translocation in phloem is achieved by utilizing energy. You see, the downward movement, how is the downward movement possible? Some energy has to be supplied, and that energy is supplied by the digestive process or the process of the ATP being converted into ADP. We have learnt about ATP molecule and ADP molecule. It is the energy currency of the cell. That energy is used while conducting food materials from the top to the bottom. Materials like sucrose is a form of sugar, is transferred into phloem tissue using energy from the ATP, adenosine triphosphate. This increases the osmotic pressure of the tissue, causing water to move into the phloem tissue. This pressure moves the material in the phloem tissue, which has less pressure. This allows the phloem to move material according to plant's needs. For example, in the spring season, sugar stored in the root or in the stem tissue would be transported to the buds, which need energy for the buds to blossom and grow into flowers and fruits. So this is how transportation of food and water takes place in plants. Alright, so this section is about only transportation in human beings and animals, as well as transportation of food and materials in plants. In the next session, we will discuss about excretion. Excretion is just as important because the byproducts of any digestive process, okay, is generally unwanted substances, the byproducts. Those byproducts have to be removed from the body, otherwise it becomes a poisonous substance, it becomes toxic. And we will discuss excretion later on. For the time being, this is enough for today. Have a nice day.